New Zealand is complaining because she submitted to investigation by Dr. David Jacobs. She feels he didn't treat her correctly. And I don't know whether he did or not. But that is not the be-all and end-all of UFO abductions.
I don't think there's any winners here. It's a tawdry affair, and it just, I think, once again, sheds light on the inadequacies of the abduction researching protocols that should be in place and aren't. So,
well, one thing here is that we did have a fascinating overview of the abduction scenario when we had Kathleen Mart on last week's episode, and that was done direct from the International UFO Congress. And the one thing I noticed, I was only there a short time just to do the interviews with you and maybe to wander around a little bit. I didn't have the time to basically spend 3 days there. I haven't done the 3-day at a UFO convention thing for quite a long time. But you're telling me they had quite a big attendance there.
Yeah, I have a personal fondness for the heyday of the Eureka Springs Lou Farish conferences in the mid-'90s. That's where I really cut my teeth, met a lot of my researcher friends who I've been in fairly close contact now with over the years. And other than the Eureka Springs conventions there, I really felt this was the best UFO convention, or in this case, Congress, I've ever attended. John Rayo and the Open Minds team did just an amazing job, for organizing and pulling off their very first Congress. I was very, very impressed with the professionalism, the lineup of speakers, with one or two exceptions, and just the general buzz that seemed to be permeating the place. It was just amazingly attended. I mean, they sold out. I mean, they had over 1,500 people. I went to the sushi bar one night, and they were out of rice. I went to the bar; they had no draft beer. So I think the Fort McDowell Resort and Casino is going to have to ratchet up their buying there for the next one.
You know what? They'll get greedy. They'll raise the rates.
Well, probably, but evidently, from what I understand, Open Minds has signed a contract for 5 years. So this is the first of hopefully quite a number of congresses that will be held there.
You were saying attendance is about 1,500. And normally you get a few hundred at a UFO convention. A lot of times you get less than a few hundred. And most people who sponsor UFO conventions, myself included, I did that a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Most of the people who do this crazy thing, they lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate. It's not a question, saying, they're just in it for the money. But if you're shelling out thousands of dollars to rent space at a hotel, to pay travel expenses, maybe fees for speakers, you deserve to at least get a return on that investment and maybe have a few dollars for your time, even if it's at minimum wage.
Yep, yeah. And they did have a lot of volunteers, I think, which helped, in terms of the total amount of overhead that they needed to deal with. Myself included, I guess I was volunteered. I was wearing so many hats there, my head was spinning. Thank God
you have that one hat you always wear.
No, I wore about 3 different hats, actually. Physically,
they all look the same. What kind of hat is that? Is that borrowed from Indiana Jones or what?
No, it's called a casino-style hat. It's a Rosemary Ellen Guiley called it the Shadow Man hat. It's very similar to the fedora-wearing Shadow Man. But it's part of my costume. I've been wearing a hat like that for many years. I use it to stand out, from the crowd. I don't think there's Jim Morris has his little fedora, but I'm proud of my hat. I just bought a new hat band for it, and on the Navajo reservation, and I wear it proudly. You're
shown clean-shaven on our site,
Correct.
But the real you today is the beard.
Well, I do have a goatee and a mustache, which is a recent addition to my costume. But I had somebody mention to me at the MUFON meeting I stopped in and said hello at last week prior to the convention. I stopped in and said hello, and somebody said, every time I see you, you look totally different. And I guess that's a compliment.
Well, I haven't changed in 400 years. I understand there's an app for that.
There probably is by now.
There's an app for everything else. There was an app we mentioned, I think, a few weeks ago, an app for investigation of strange audio sounds from the spirit world, all sorts of apps. But you know what? Let's segue, because that's why we're here. We have John Alexander joining us. Boy. And is he a colonel? Is he a doctor? Is he both?
Yes, he's both. He's a retired lieutenant colonel, and he has a Ph.D. we're going to have to double check with him on this, but I believe his PhD from Warren College, I believe, is in thanatology, which is the study of death.
Whoa.
What a perfect degree to have when you're in charge of development of non-lethal weapons technology. I guess you really have to know about death to be able to design weapons that don't kill people.
Well, I was thinking that he was not a technical advisor to the movie Flatliners. Do you remember that movie?
I don't think so. Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
That's where Julia Roberts met Kiefer Sutherland. Right?
That's right, and they all tried to kill themselves and hopefully remember things in the afterlife that they could bring forth and then resurrect themselves. And, of course, as with any movie, at least one person dies during this encounter. But that has nothing to do with John Alexander, except for the fact that he has an interesting book out now called UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. And I want to know more about this, especially
we're going to find out a lot
latter.
more about it. It's a very fascinating read, and I do recommend it. I'm telling you, everybody, if you're as, getting a little cynical and jaded like I am after 20 years in this field, I think you'll appreciate an insider's view of many of the myths and conspiracies that are said to exist within this realm. He does do a very good job of pointing out, I think in many cases, the obvious. And I do highly recommend this book. I think it's an absolute must addition to your library.
Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-877-804-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. So, disable the cable and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV right now to sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99 and up to 4 rooms. And there's no equipment to buy. That includes your free HD TV upgrade, your free DVR upgrade, and your free professional installation. And the best part, the pristine digital picture and sound. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. So, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. 1-877-804-MY-TV. Disable the cable, cut costs, and get more. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. 1-877-804-MY-TV.
Are you wondering about your retirement portfolio? Are you confident that the financial advisor is experienced enough to combat climbing interest rates, taxes, and inflation? Stop guessing and go to the expert, Robert Chapman of the International Forecaster. When you subscribe to the International Forecaster, you get Robert Chapman's 45 years of experience and concise investment recommendations. Who needs sugar-coated excuses when you can get the cold hard facts and proven investment leads you can't get anywhere else? For a free introductory copy to Robert Chapman's International Forecaster, subscribe now at theinternationalforecaster.com or call 877-479-8178. Experience the difference. When you subscribe, you can email Robert Chapman directly to obtain investment advice tailored just for you. Don't wait another minute. Subscribe today at theinternationalforecaster.com or call 877-479-8178. That's 877-479-8178.
Alex has told you that the Mideast uprisings over food prices and shortages caused by fuel costs are spreading worldwide. We're seeing the impact right here in the United States. Ethanol that was supposed to reduce petroleum use and fuel prices hit a 30-month high in February, and pump prices are expected to reach $5 a gallon. Because of shipping costs, food is being priced out of the reach of millions of Americans, with an expected 35% jump in the next 60 days. Move quickly while you can still afford it, and eFoods Direct will pay your shipping costs for you. For the best tasting, long-term storable food, you pay nothing for shipping and can put every dollar into food at today's prices. eFoods Direct, food so delicious you can serve it tonight or save it for the future. Take advantage of free shipping by calling 800-409-5633. On the web, efoodsdirect.com/Alex, 800-409-5633, or efoodsdirect.com/Alex.
Did you know that drinking pure, high alkaline water is one of the most important factors in maintaining high energy and vibrant health? Most experts agree that the water you drink should be at a pH level of 8 or higher. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops, available only at alkavision.com, combine a unique formula of only the most alkaline minerals. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops alkalize your water, ridding the body of harmful toxins, and helps you regain health and energy. Alkalizing your water by simply adding 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps the body rid itself of acidic waste, increases oxygen content, and raises the pH of your body to healthy levels. And bacteria and viruses cannot survive in an alkaline high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops for only $29.95 at alkavision.com. That's ALKAvision.com. Or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com today.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com. Get in on all the action at forum.theparacast.com.
We're in the Paracast with Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. Joining us for the rest of the show, Dr. John Alexander. He's author of a new book in hardcover. You know, we don't see many hardcovers anymore, called UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. Now, Dr. Alexander, welcome to the Paracast. And I guess the big question I would have is, why does somebody with all your credentials, how do you get caught up in the UFO mystery?
Well, I'm a masochist. I want to get beat up, then I come out and play with these folks. As I say, this is kind of a no-win situation, because one of the things I mentioned early on is you better understand conspiracy theory. You know, if you either believe there's a conspiracy, or if you deny it, you're part of the cover-up.
I love the story in your book about the little woman at the Conspiracy Con conference, you know, freaking out, pointing at you and saying, "It's him. He's the one that was on the ship that abducted me."
Yeah, there are no limits. No, I actually, the original question, I've been interested in the topic since 1947. And, I'm old enough to actually remember those incidents, and having reported on them through our little school radio program at the time.
So Kenneth Arnold, made your little school radio station. That's interesting.
When I say little, we're talking about La Crosse, Wisconsin, so this was really small.
Okay, so you read about the subject as a kid. Did you spend much time on it before you started doing more intensive research?
I followed the field for decades. Certainly was a MUFON member and all of those sorts of things. Read articles, books, all of the usual suspects. Eventually got more deeply involved when I was actually on active duty. We thought there was probably some black program someplace, like most of your listening audience would believe. And so I put together a group of people that came from all of the services, most of the agencies you know about and some that you don't, and aerospace industry, all of whom had
Excuse me, sir. Some that you don't. Explain that, please.
I'm sorry?
When you mention agencies that we know and some that we don't know, what do you mean?
Well, there were some that were not public certainly at that time. And so anyway, we were interested. The people had to come. It was literally an old boy net. Have the right clearance, have interest, and we started having a few plenary sessions to discuss what people knew. And what we found out basically is they knew the same rumors that everybody else knew in the field, and certainly all the civilian sector. We also found out, as I went around, everybody was more interested in what other agencies might be doing than the phenomena itself. Because, as you know, in Washington, information is power. And so you don't want to be left behind.
Explain why you named it the Advanced Theoretical Physics Group. I think this is an interesting point of note.
Yeah, well, at that time, we're talking early 80s. Of course, FOIAs were hot and heavy. And so what we decided to do was to name it something that if a FOIA came in for UFOs, would not be associated with it. Now, the other thing we did was there were not supposed to be any written records. Few people, it turns out, had violated that, but there weren't any minutes of the meetings. There were nothing going out announcing the meeting. So if anybody came in asking about it, we could literally say it doesn't exist, or there are no written records.
Well, I've always wondered, and this is something that's puzzled me over the years. I think I mentioned to you when we initially talked to have you on the show that I kind of misstated and said I've been following your career for years, and you chuckled, and I kind of recorrected myself and said I would have loved to follow your career for years. You're quite an enigmatic person in this field. And one of the things that's enigmatic about you is your doctoral studies with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, right, and the field of thanatology. Why did you choose this particular area of study, and would you care to discuss your motivations there?
Well, some of that was serendipity. I had done a lot of work in a wide variety of behavioral science. Anyway, and I was getting ready to do a dissertation. I was interested in near-death studies, had studied looked at the near-death studies for a long, long time. And actually, I think there's some crossover between NDEs and UFOs and all of these things, as people have heard me say. But what happened was the final thing. I was in my office in Atlanta at Fort McPherson there, and I got a call one day that said, Elizabeth is going to be coming through Atlanta Airport, and in those days you could go out, to the gate and those things. She has several hours and wondered if you could meet her. And, of course, I said yes. And so the next day I went to the airport and met her, and she said, of all the people I know in Atlanta, I chose you to call, and I have no idea why. And so I said, I think I'm supposed to ask you a question. And it was, would she head the committee? She says, oh, yes.
So she was your doctoral thesis advisor for your
she was the head of the actual head of the committee, yes. I mean, there were other people on it. And what I ended up doing the dissertation on was looking at changes in spirituality in people who attended her life, death, and transition workshop. She was an amazing woman. She's the one who brought hospice to the U.S., but also had a series of incidents that were just totally unexplainable. I might mention the one thing that she really mentioned that caused a change. I had used the word religiousness in the proposal, and because there's a lot of information available about religiousness per se, so you had a lot of quotes. And she said, no, you have to change it to spirituality. And what we found was that there's a lot of people, even if not asked, when you say, do you consider yourself to be religious, will say, no, but I think I'm a spiritual being. And they actively say, I reject the dogma of the church, but I think we have a relationship with higher beings and that sort of thing.
Well, did this field of study and your intense interest in this subject lead to your first major position after retiring from the military, which was at the Los Alamos lab, where you were involved in developing the whole concept of non-lethal weapons technology? I find the interesting, it's kind of a conundrum. You're studying near-death experiences and actual what happens when the soul transits from this mortal coil, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in the non-lethal weapons development game.
I'll tell you what, we'll have to get into the non-lethal developments game and lots more coming up. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Ray Perkins, a reclusive veteran burned out from the Gulf War, lives tortured by relentless, perplexing nightmares. Nightmares of a horrific battle in deep space and of a mysterious woman suffering in agony for her devastated world. A woman not yet born, calling across centuries to him. Then, a coincidence leads him to his destiny, his chance to alter the universe. Attack of the Rockoids. The former fiction editor for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Robert Simpson, writes, "The soul of the novel Attack of the Rockoids lies in its heart and passion for building a convincing tale of a love that spans the galaxy. A thrilling story. Attack of the Rockoids is available now. Read a sample chapter and get a special discount off of the cover price at our website, rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com. Attack of the Rockoids, a novel in the grand science fiction tradition."
The food storage industry leader has done it again. Introducing FDG Clubs and Survival Bucks from the Freeze Dry Guy. For over 39 years, the Freeze Dry Guy has served various government agencies and the private sector with the finest in storable foods and emergency rations. If you've wanted to build emergency food supplies but couldn't afford it, now you can. Go to freezedryguy.com, click on products, and look for the Freeze Dry Guy Clubs to pay as you go. Now you can build food storage without going into debt. Choose from a payment range of $95 to $450 per month. Our clubs work with everyone's budget. Plus, when you join Freeze Dry Guy Clubs, you'll get additional rewards. For example, this month, get 10% back in Survival Bucks on all purchases in the Freeze Dry Guy product line, plus free shipping within the lower 48 states on any order amount. Hurry, go to freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. The Freeze Dry Guy, the best you can buy. We all know that Berkey water purification systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 5 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey water filtration systems. The Berkey Light systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light system today, complete with 2 black Berkey elements for only $209, and the Berkey Guy will include 3 sport Berkey water bottles and ship everything to you free of charge. That's right, 3 sport Berkey water bottles and free shipping. An $87 value, yours free. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at goberkey.com. That's goberkey.com today.
It's the winter cold and flu supplement sale at herbalhealer.com. Take advantage of Herbal Healer Academy's incredible savings on the best cold and flu supplements available. Many of you know elderberry is exceptional against viral infections. Right now, Herbal Healer Academy has Elderberry Power, regularly priced at $16.95, now incredibly low at only $10 for 60 vegetarian caps. For children and seniors, our Herbal Healer Academy Flew Away Elderberry Liquid is only $13 for a 4-ounce bottle. Also on super sale, olive leaf capsules, oregano oil plus capsules, and our incredible Respirate formula, Oregacillin Physician Strength capsules for your lungs. Normally $34.95, now just $25. Hit the winter specials link at herbalhealer.com for these cold and flu supplement specials and other on-sale products like apple cider vinegar, brain power, and neuro recovery. New customers get a free catalog with your first order. Log on and hit the winter specials now at herbalhealer.com.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, this is nuclear physicist lecturer Stanton Friedman. You are listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
We have Dr. John Alexander, author of UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities, and we'll have to find out what all of those signify. I'm Gene Steinberg. Chris O'Brien's the co-host here in the Paracast. So the question on the table, Dr. Alexander, about non-lethal weapons, etc. What's your answer?
Yeah, well, what had happened was that I had retired from the military. in 88. The number of serendipitous incidents that occurred just can't be enumerated, just one after another. I was actually going to go to work for one of the major defense contractors, ended up at Los Alamos National Laboratory instead. Was looking at what was going on in the world, and at that time we had the invasion of Panama, Grenada had come along, things going on eventually in Somalia, and just said, we've kind of geared up for World War III. Major tank battles and those sorts of things, and yet the kinds of actions we're being engaged in really require minimal levels of force. For instance, in Panama, these were longtime allies. Our argument was with Noriega and a few of his henchmen, but certainly not the Panamanian people. How do you apply force in a very constrained way? Because at the end of the day, you wanted them to be friendly. And you have, big families with long memories, so killing folks is not very practical. So I was looking at the conundrum of between doing nothing and doing too much, and what kinds of things could allow us to do that.
Well, where is the state of the art in this particular type of weaponry? You don't hear much about non-lethal weapons being deployed. Occasionally you'll see a brief little piece that'll show some sort of sonic cannon or sticky glue or weapons that fire nets, that sort of thing. But are these types of weaponry, is it being deployed currently?
Well, yes. That just says more about what is being read about and written about than, as you said, the state of the art. What emerged, we held some studies. I was studying with the Council on Foreign Relations that was able to bring in John Deutsch, who was then the Undersecretary of Defense. This was in the mid-'90s, and said, look, military needs to get much more involved. And this led to the creation of the Joint Non-Lethal Weapons Directorate under the Marines, and it's still up and running at Quantico. Lots of evaluations and testing and R&D going on and actual fielding. Many of the units in the field, if you remember the Balkans, went into Iraq, some in Afghanistan, but you actually have whole non-lethal weapons packages that are deployed with units now under the right set of circumstances.
Right, of course, and as everybody probably guesses, the ubiquitous taser, of course, is one that is most visible. I think many law enforcement officials, park rangers for the federal government, are routinely armed with this particular type of non-lethal weapons technology.
Well, in fact, I went to see Rick Smith, who's the president of Taser, and happened to have been there in Scottsdale. They're a growth company. One of the things I say, and I'm willing to go to the mat on this, but Taser has never killed anybody, despite all of the noise to the contrary. And it's a very, very effective weapon. They're working on some things now that we were discussing to increase the range. One of the problems with Taser from a military perspective is you've got to be very close. They've got about a 30-foot range. With the extended range on it. And one of the questions that came up early on from the troops and all non-lethal weapons is it better than a rock? So they would like things that allow them to, be able to stay outside of rock throwing distance. And some of those are coming.
Well, this kind of dovetails into the whole idea of psychotronic weapons. How much work did you do in developing weapons that were geared more towards the mental battlefield as opposed to weapons that are more of a physical nature?
Sure. Zero.
Okay. Well, one term that you hear bannered about among this conspiracy crowd is the idea of psychotronic weapons platform. I must admit I've used this term before as well. I know that the PSYOPs portion of the military is one that is fairly hidden and isn't talked about much publicly. But what is your knowledge about the state of the art for influencing the mind at a distance, as opposed to some sort of more physical type of process?
I'm not sure how to address the question. Now, if you're talking about literally the mind control stuff, what is classic psychotronic weapons, the answer is real simple, zero. Just not an area that they're going into. If you talk about influence operations, meaning what's happening in information warfare, then you're on a huge, huge scale. And I would argue that most of what they call PSYOPs, which would be psychological operations, is pretty much in the open. And they would argue quite strongly against using black and what's known as black and gray PSYOPs, because the utility is limited, and sooner or later you get caught, and the implications are usually worse than having told the truth to begin with.
Oh, that's interesting. That's an unexpected reply. I would think that we would have.
By the way, I also was trained in antiquity as a psychological operations officer, something people point out from time to time in the conspiracy realm. But, the
disinformation specialist, Dr. Alexander?
I'm sorry?
Does that make you a disinformation specialist then?
I was about to say that it in general, it is far worse to use things that are not true, because the blowback is worse and harder to sort out than telling the truth to begin with.
That's interesting. Well, let's dovetail into the subject of your book, which I find fascinating, and I highly recommend it to our listening audience. I've only had a chance to really skim through it. I can't wait to dive into it, in a very intense way. I do like the way you've supplied a summary at the end of each chapter. That really did help my research process, only having the book for a couple days. But one of the things that you mentioned in here is you take the whole field of ufology and you do a very dispassionate, objective breakdown of all the various misconceptions, pop culture myths. And you just do a brilliant job, and I really mean this, and I'm not stroking you here. You did an excellent job of looking at various aspects of this field and just explaining the reality as you see it. And I think, obviously we could go we could do several shows on these various areas that you cover, but I sum up for us the extent of official and unofficial knowledge within the government about UFOs, and possibly explain why you have come to the conclusion that there really is nothing to disclose, for instance, that we're dealing with a set of information that's spread all throughout government, and that there is no super secret controlling entity that seems to be holding on to all these UFO secrets and crash saucers and alien bodies and the like. I think that's a good place to start.
But before he goes there, hold that thought, Dr. Alexander, because we have to tell our listeners, if you have a question or a comment about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. Once again, that's news@theparacast.com. We promise we do read each and every letter, and we respond to most of it. And there's one more thing. We have a forum at forum.theparacast.com. That's forum.theparacast.com. That's where you can have online discussions with the rest of our listeners. Just sign up and get involved in all the action. Dr. John Alexander joins us. The book is UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
The Paracast.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKEsoft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKEsoft.com.
Becoming a modern smoker is now easier and more cost-effective thanks to LeSig. Traditional smokers the world over love LeSig. E-cigarettes with a look, feel, and taste of real cigarettes, but without the nasty smoke, ashes, or stains. LeSig is powered by revolutionary microelectronic technology. A small rechargeable battery and unique replaceable cartridge provide all the satisfaction and benefits of smoking without the smoke and all the hazards. See the large variety of LeSig e-cigarette supplies and accessories at LeSig.com. That's LECIG.com. LeSig is competitively priced, comes with the best customer service, a 30-day warranty, and satisfaction guaranteed. What a great gift idea. For a 10% discount, mention GCN when you call 870-518-4307. That's 870-518-4307. Ask for fast, free, same-day shipping. Order online at LeSig.com and use promo code GCN at checkout. That's LECIG.com. LeSig, for today's modern smoker.
There's mounting evidence suggesting that there are people, governments, corporations, and whole professions intent on short-circuiting humanity's well-being. GMO, food legislation protecting big agriculture, the attempted elimination of vitamins and alternative medicines, it seems their hand has been tipped. They want to dictate your health, wealth, and your longevity. Whatever the outcome, we have a solution. Wild edible food. Why worry about food when all has been provided? We imagine that we were ejected from the garden and never invited back, but the garden's still here. There is an endless wild abundance which grows all over our green earth, just waiting for you to wake up and see it. Let author Linda Runyon teach you how to see, know, get, prepare, store, and eat wild edible food. Save money, add nutrition, and ignore the noise when you go shopping in nature's supermarket. Go to ofthefield.com and get started today. Or call 1-888-51-EAT-FREE. That's ofthefield.com or call 1-888-51-EAT-FREE and begin to see a different world.
Normal blood pressure, naturally. How would that make you feel?
I'm Don from New Mexico. January of 2000, I had a heart attack. Then my real health began going downhill, and I had high blood pressure, high blood sugar, poor vision, and I really wasn't sleeping well. I was a mess, pretty much.
Don reports dramatic improvements with Heart and Body Extract.
I started taking Heart and Body Extract, and from within a few days, I started sleeping a lot better. My blood pressure normalized, my blood sugar normalized, and my sleep really did improve.
Experience these benefits and more when your body gets what it needs with the assistance of Heart and Body Extract. Order at hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305. That's hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305.
And folks, I did not expect this at all. By the 7th, 8th, and 9th day, I saw dramatic improvements from taking Heart and Body Extract.
Details at hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305 for Heart and Body Extract.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
This is the Paracast. You never know what's going to happen next.
We're back with Dr. John Alexander. The subject on the table relates to the book UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. So, Dr. Alexander, Chris posed a very multifaceted question there with all sorts of permutations. So, you have the floor. We'd like to have your answer.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I call my book, UFOs for People with Common Sense. And, as I said earlier in this area, the conspiracy theory, and I find many of the ufologists, if you will, just as closed-minded as the skeptics or debunkers, if you will. Yeah, they've made up their mind as to what, and then only accept facts that fit their theory. Now, what I found is, and what I say is, when I say no cover-up, that does not mean there aren't people who get told to sit down and be quiet from time to time. But in my view, there is no overall conspiracy. One of the things I used to describe is good news and bad news. Good news is the government's been telling you the truth, albeit badly from time to time. The bad news is the government's telling you the truth. The reality is they just don't care. Now, I do think that, let's take Bentwaters as a specific example, because that's one where I think I'm sure, low-level enlisted men and some even, NCOs were interrogated and told, be quiet, don't ever talk about this again. Conversely, Colonel Halt, who was the deputy base commander, there was no such admonition or even interviews or anything else. And in fact, when he was about to retire and was getting debriefed on a series of secret programs, this is a classified program across the board, and he even asked about, well, what about Bentwaters, and said the response was they just laughed. So the point is that I think the investigators have heard the same rumors that everybody else, and it's easier to just tell people don't talk about it than it is to sort it out. I use an example here in a different field, but I was at a meeting at the Office of Secretary of Defense, staff officers, fairly senior, responding to a snowflake from Rumsfeld, and read the classified documents and asked them, I said, what is secret about this? I mean, this is newspaper kind of stuff. And they said, yes, it's just easier to classify everything than it is to figure out what we should protect. And this has led to a lot of the conspiracies in many, many areas, is the government's propensity to over-classify things.
They're taking the path of least resistance. If we don't understand it or it requires more than a modicum of work, classify it and maybe just out of sight, out of mind.
Oh, well, I do address the issue what I call too tough to handle. They say, for instance, some of the northern tier sightings, and particularly the ones at Malmstrom, where the missiles were shut down, definitely happened. And I think they looked at it, couldn't figure out it was. And then, so what they did is say, well, we'll just wait. And if it doesn't happen again, it's gone away. So for right now, it's in too tough to handle. Just won't bother to address it. And that is prevalent in many, many areas.
Well, picking up on that, we've had some pretty high-profile persons come forward over the years, like, for instance, Colonel Philip Corso, and his claims, quite to the contrary, that there is crash-retrieved and back-engineered technology projects going on, that there are dead aliens. Now, I do understand that the role of his co-author may have sort of prettied up, jazzed up, and beefed up some of the book, and I think Corso did have some was a little dismayed about that. And I do know that you talked to him about this. What do you make of someone like a Philip Corso who comes forward and refutes basically what you're asserting about the government's role in all this?
Yep, I understand that. I knew Phil before, during, and after the book coming out. I was with him 2 weeks before he died to address some of these issues. In my book, I have an Appendix A is a letter that I sent to him, which is a series of 90-some errors. And they run from little things like it's Adelphi, Maryland, not Adelphia, to huge things like, no, the Cold War was not a cover for fighting ET. There's two problems. One is his book did get very wide distribution, probably the best UFO book from a sales perspective that has been out there. And conversely, if you look at the various technologies that he claimed, not a shred of evidence to support any of the technological claims. You can look at the history of each of the technologies involved, from fiber optics to integrated circuitry to night
Velcro.
vision.
Velcro, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah. And we know exactly how that was developed. If he were right, you would assume at some point what you do is you see a big bump. That just doesn't happen.
Well, what about, for instance, the whole idea of crash retrievals and or something like the MJ-12? Now, Bob Woods, who I know you've known for many years,
yep.
Has been involved in. I think he was one of the Advanced Theoretical Physics Group members. He's been involved in ufology for years. Of course, he's ex-aerospace, high up in aerospace. Why would someone like Bob Wood and his son Ryan be so enamored with the whole idea of crash retrievals enough to put on a conference every year about this subject?
Well, both friends. I've known the senior, Bob Wood for decades. There are certain areas where we agree to disagree. He's certainly done a lot of work, in the supposed manual, which he now even suggests was not really a government manual for recovering ETs, but was real but designed to fool the Soviets. It talked about formal disinformation that was aimed at an adversary at the time.
Well, similar to the MJ-12 documents. The MJ-12 documents, he's taken the ball and run with them.
Yeah. Well, as we know, the MJ-12 documents per se basically have been, I think, thoroughly discredited across the board. That would be my position on it, is certainly that of the archives. They've actually been able to find some documents that have, the body, the text, and that sort of thing, and then, a couple of changes in it, and the document reappears as MJ-12, which is a different discussion.
Well, you know what? You raised it here, so let's just dive in very quickly, and we'll get back to some of the other issues. Okay, so we have the MJ-12 documents. You have a document that somebody, an independent party, a hoaxer, whatever, took this document and fabricated the MJ-12 documents from it? Is that what you're saying?
Pretty much. That's conventional wisdom. I do a comparison in my presentation that has to do with Watergate and MJ-12.
Watergate and MJ-12?
Yeah, exactly. If you look at how Watergate evolved, when you had Felt, who really was the deputy director of the FBI, putting out information, and I'm sorry, I think I'm confusing you. We're talking about all the president's men now, and that information, how that came out.
Sure.
And
with Deep Throat.
So you had Felt going to the Washington Post, et cetera, et cetera. He was known. The Washington Post, a huge journal, has resources, puts the information out. They go to who? You did what? You dropped something in the mail and maybe somebody will pick it up, and they have no resources and they're unknown. And that just defies common sense. So that's why I said the book is, when you follow these things through and say, how would you do that, or why would you do it? It makes no sense at all.
Well, do you think maybe, and this is something that we'll have to carry through our next segment, that this is all planned, deliberate, or just a bunch of fortunate or unfortunate accidents that allow these so-called conspiracies to happen? Ponder that question for a moment. Our guest is Dr. John Alexander. The book is called UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities, and I think we're focusing a lot on the latter two. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Hi, Ted Anderson announcing a great way to listen to radio on the telephone. By calling 760-569-7700, you'll be hearing GCNlive.com programs in seconds. Come to GCNlive.com, find your favorite host's dedicated phone number, and hear them 24/7. You heard me right. Every show has a dedicated phone number. Stop by GCNlive.com and bookmark their number today. And again, that's 760-569-7700. We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit and carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Ted Anderson, I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We have Dr. John Alexander. The book is UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. The question, of course, on the table with Dr. Alexander is, I guess, the deliberate or not so deliberate nature of how these so-called conspiracies and things work out. What's your reaction?
My reaction is you got a lot of folks with too much time on their hands. Because you get to why would they do it? I don't know, but it's clear.
Get out of the basement, young man.
I'm sorry?
I said it's a lot of guys that live in mom's basement that need to come upstairs and get some air.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, it's obvious that there's a lot of folks out there, and I guess the equivalent today would be what happens on many of these blogs, where people just get in and spend an inordinate amount of time, jerking people's chains. And I've seen it, repeatedly in this field. And unfortunately, it muddies the water quite a bit. One of the things we're getting far away from here, and seems to happen in this field, is that they concentrate on, these conspiracies and things that they disagree with, as opposed to my main thrust, which is, hey, some of this stuff is real and very important and deserves to be researched. But the UFO community would much rather play in the mud than get up and try to get to the stars.
Yeah, and that's an important point you raise, and I think we should qualify our conversation. You absolutely do agree that there is a real UFO phenomenon at the core of this mystery, that it deserves investigation, but it perhaps isn't as pervasive and as filled with glitz and bells and whistles like the conspiracy buffs and the pop culture would have us believe. So you are agreeing that there is something worthy of study here, just to get you on the record on that.
And that's absolutely true. And my most important point is that we need to clean this up and make it so that reputable scientists can get into the field without, potentially damaging their career. Right now, this is totally toxic, and I can give examples that where I was attacked. I'll give you one in Scientific American, where they came in and said basically that I couldn't be trusted because I believed in things that most scientists were skeptical of. And the point was the article was on non-lethal weapons, not UFOs or phenomenology, that they use these ad hominem attacks to, attack my personal credibility. And that's, anybody on the outside who looks at these fields, and there's a number of scientists who are frankly interested, but do not want their name associated because of the potential degradation. If you take guys like Bob John, and this is not in the UFO field, but was in, studying remote viewing and psychokinesis, this is an individual who was the dean of engineering at Princeton, the dean, and yet, got taken on and had, you can't say his career was destroyed, but he certainly had a lot of bumps and bruises from the routine scientific community just because he said, I'll study this objectively. That's what we've got to get away from.
Well, you find yourself in the curious position of getting it from both sides. It's like you have a target on your backside and your front side.
Well,
not
the
an
third
enviable place
side
to be.
I throw the third side in there, and that's some of the fundamentalist religion who don't want to hear about these things either.
No, they don't. Well, you mentioned in your book a very interesting meeting that you had with Ben Rich. In the middle of the meeting, you had the earthquake happen. That was so.
No, that's Jacques Vallée.
Jacques Vallée you were meeting with, and the earthquake happened. That's an interesting
that's in Jacques.
coincidence.
Jacques and I have served on boards. We've known each other for decades, but that particular meeting took place when at the big San Francisco quake during the World Series.
Right. How about listing off for us? Just rattle off a list of credible, worthy UFO cases that you feel indicate the actual reality of this phenomenon and that are deserving of scrutiny and research. Could you give us a list of you supply us a list in the book?
Well, I can't do all of them by any stretch of the imagination. I think they go on. In fact, one of the things I do at the beginning of the book is I list a couple of minor cases you've never heard of. Two of them, my brothers were involved. Two more, my son was involved. And the point of that is that most UFO sightings are never reported to anybody. And in cases like that, they come from credible sources. So there's got to be literally millions of those kinds of observations out there. Now, the cases that I definitely like, for instance, I put Bentwaters at the top of the heap. That is one in which the evidence keeps getting stronger and stronger. You get many of these phenomenal cases. We had mentioned crash retrievals, and we may want to come back to that. But usually, the more you look at that, the more it sort of dissipates over time. Bentwaters strong, at least 80 witnesses, many of them in the PRP. These are Air Force people in the Personnel Reliability Program, meaning that we know a lot about them. They've had psychological testing, they're taking P-tests, so we know they're not on drugs, and yet more and more, first-hand witnesses, particularly like Jim Peniston. The first time I called him when he said, "Oh, you mean the one I touched?" And I'm pretty convinced that probably did happen. You've got, the base commander or deputy base commander, Chuck Halt, who went out there, with the notion that they were going to resolve the thing rather quickly, instead has a, life-changing experience of his own. And many, many more. That would be at the top of the list. Phoenix Lights is a great case. Here again, thousands of people saw it, and you look at the simple answer. They dropped some flares over over southwest of Phoenix, and you go, but wait a minute, this thing started in Henderson, maybe farther up, but then seen over Kingman, Prescott, Phoenix, all the way to Tucson. Certainly not flares, and then
the flares occurred 2 hours later, right?
Yeah, okay. It's a different incident. The other thing about both of these cases that I've mentioned, they're not singular events. I mean, I think in the perception of most civilians who are not in this field, these are fleeting things seen at night or whatnot. And reality is that, no, many of them recur. Another case that fits into this category is Gulf Breeze. I mean, that went on for years.
Okay, but then the thing I have a problem with when it regards to Gulf Breeze is not that cases occurred, but one particular character, one Ed Walters, whether he contributed to some of the sideshow about that case, partly because at one time they found what looked to be a model of a UFO hidden in the attic of one of the homes that he built.
Yeah, well, I would suggest you go look at Bruce Maccabee's website, because he did a paper early on that was, 55 sightings without Ed. So this is not...
That's the point. I'm not disagreeing with you here. I understand that Dr. Maccabee has a lot of information. I wanted to separate this because that's one of the big problems we run into in the UFO field. There may be some factual information, and then it's intermingled with this nonsense. And that's why we have problems trying to understand what's going on.
I went to Gulf Breeze, and I won't go into the whole, I tell in the book, I tell the Men in Black story that happened there. But what impressed me...
Oh, that is a story I want to hear about. But you know what? We're just about out of time with this segment, so I really think we should push that over to our next segment about Men in Black, because we always want to hear about Men in Black. You know, whether there are Men in Black or whether it's just, you know, one of these crazy illusions or hoaxes within the fabric of the UFO field. Our guest, Dr. John Alexander, the book is called UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities, and I think we're focusing on all three here. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Hi, this is Tamar from Namecheap. We're a domain name and web hosting company, and we really care about our customers. With domain name purchases, Namecheap offers free SSL and free WhoisGuard for a year to protect your identity from spammers. Most importantly, we care about you. If you'd like to learn more, please visit us at radio.namecheap.com, radio.namecheap.com for web hosting and domain name specials. You can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/Namecheap or become a fan of ours on Facebook at facebook.com/Namecheap. See you online.
Fate magazine provides true reports of the strange and unknown. Keep up with the latest on angels and miracles, psychic phenomena, ghosts, UFOs, life after death, and much, much more. To receive your free issue of Fate magazine, call now at 1-800-728-2730 or visit their website at www.fatemag.com. That's 1-800-728-2730. What are you waiting for? Your fate awaits.
Jim Newcomer from Midas Resources, March 11th, 2011. Gold opened this morning at $14.1290. A 1-ounce gold coin can be purchased for $14.4932, $724.66 for a half ounce, or $362.33 for a quarter ounce. That's $14.4932, $724.66, and $362.33.
The Constitution and the Bill of Rights have been reduced to old relics politicians ignore, trample with their outlandish, overreaching policies. Your support of the Campaign for Liberty stands in the way of this insidious process. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. I've teamed up with the Campaign for Liberty to offer the authentic proof quarter-ounce pure gold coin. For only $390 plus shipping, Midas will donate $100 to this incredible organization. Help fight big government by ordering your gold coin at 800-686-2237. You get to win twice by owning gold and fighting an overreaching government. Call 800-686-2237. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
Alex has told you that the Mideast uprisings over food prices and shortages caused by fuel costs are spreading worldwide. We're seeing the impact right here in the United States. Ethanol that was supposed to reduce petroleum use and fuel prices hit a 30-month high in February, and pump prices are expected to reach $5 a gallon. Because of shipping costs, food is being priced out of the reach of millions of Americans with an expected 35% jump in the next 60 days. Move quickly while you can still afford it, and eFoods Direct will pay your shipping costs for you. For the best tasting long-term storable food, you pay nothing for shipping and can put every dollar into food at today's prices. eFoods Direct, food so delicious you can serve it tonight or save it for the future. Take advantage of free shipping by calling 800-409-5633. On the web, efoodsdirect.com/Alex, 800-409-5633, or efoodsdirect.com/Alex.
Never buy home canning jar lids again. No kidding. When you buy Tadler reusable canning lids once, you'll never buy canning lids ever again. Safely store emergency preparedness foods for years. Traditional metal lids are single-use throwaways containing BPA. But Tadler reusable canning lids are guaranteed to last a lifetime when used as designed for home canning. Tadler lids are made with a USDA and FDA-approved food-grade plastic, safe for direct food contact, and contain no BPA. Tadler lids are dishwasher safe, usable with standard pressure or water bath canning, eliminate food spoilage from acid corrosion, fit standard mason jars, are indefinitely reusable, and are proudly made in the USA. Place orders at reusablecanninglids.com or call 1-877-747-2793. 877-747-2793. Call 877-747-2793 or go to reusablecanninglids.com. That's reusablecanninglids.com for Tadler reusable canning lids, the original since 1976.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, we have hundreds of shows for you to download direct from theparacast.com. That's theparacast.com. Or check us out on iTunes.
So we return with Dr. John Alexander. The book is UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. And so I interrupted you as you were talking about Gulf Breeze because you brought up the dreaded MIB.
Well, wait a minute, John. You whipped out, you put on your wraparound shades at the end of your talk there at the UFO Congress, and you whipped out a neuralizer and you zapped everybody. So are you one of the men in black?
Well, what was missing from that is I actually have a picture there with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith and me all dressed up. And unfortunately, the slide went by too fast. As I said, the neuralizer I did get from Scott Rosenberg, who created it. No, this was, again, one of those events that, you couldn't stage. What had happened was, right cast your characters. I was from Los Alamos. I was traveling with a group of 3 other folks who came from the Skunk Works, literally. And we had been down at Special Operations Command to give a briefing on certain technology proposals, and that's in Tampa. And so the next day we were to have a meeting at Hurlburt Field, which is to the east of Pensacola. So the notion was that we would give the briefing one day, we would fly up to Pensacola, stay there. I was going to drop everybody off and go over and see Gulf Breeze. Well, rain came in, our flights got delayed, and so when we got to Pensacola, it was now just getting dark, and so I've got to get over there. And lo and behold, the rental car company gives us a 4-door, large, very, very dark green sedan that certainly looks like a black sedan. We're still dressed up. I was going to get into, more comfortable clothes, but we were still in coats and ties, black suits, and all of that. And so it was too late. So I told them what we were going to do, and they were kind of interested and whatnot. So, of course, like I said, then we went down to the beach at Gulf Breeze and show up, and there we were, definitely the men in black.
But as far as you're concerned, there is no real man in black phenomenon in the UFO field. Is that correct?
Well, it's certainly not humans, if it is. So there have certainly been reports over time, but if you remember, many of them early on talk about people who had clothes that don't wrinkle and go out and just disappear. Humans don't do that.
Try to eat Jell-O with forks.
As I know,
with forks? Wait a minute.
Remember, my premise in the last bit of the book says that whatever we're dealing with is terribly complex, and there are no simple answers. And part of the problem that I see in the UFO community is they want simple answers. If we're little grays from Zeta Reticuli, I think most of them would be happy with that just because you can get a grasp on it. Whereas I suggest if you look at these phenomena, they're far more complex than we ever anticipated. And as I put at the end of the book, we're not about to solve this problem. We're not even asking the right questions yet. And hence that leads me to why I think we need to be able to get, the best scientific minds involved. But if they keep getting contaminated by just, mere association, that's not likely to happen.
Let me ask you the obvious question here about conspiracies. A feeling on the part of some people in the UFO field that the government is taking advantage of the confusion and the arguments and all the debates that go on in the UFO field and injecting a little bit of, foreplay or something. They're involved. Do you think the government does anything? Is there any disinformation in the UFO field?
You can't say never. Now, let me give you a specific example that was classified for many, many years, and that had to do with the development of the U-2, and which, of course, was flying at about 90,000 feet, and you would get commercial pilots who were saying, I saw something above me, and it must be a UFO, because nothing could fly that high, when in fact, yes, there were things flying that high, and they would get spotted periodically. And officially, the government was very happy to hear about UFOs. I suspect you're going to get a bit of that again, and that is because of rapid expansion of remotely piloted vehicles and the kinds of things that they're going to do. You're familiar with Predator, I'm sure. But there's now a host of sensors that run from little tiny things you can put in a backpack to Global Hawk, which is, transcontinental aircraft that can stay up for 36 hours. So there's going to be a lot more sightings of things that are really kind of hard to make out, and those are frankly quite technologically savvy. George Knapp did a great study here about something that fell down near Needles, Arizona, almost assuredly a UAV, because the helicopters come in right behind it, swoop and pick it up, and that sort of thing. So probably a test vehicle. I also tell people rather frequently that, don't be surprised that strange things fly in the desert. The area to the north of where I am here is where we developed the U-2, the SR-71, the stealth aircraft, and a host of others. So there are strange things that fly out there. That does not make them ET.
Correct. And we never can be fully sure at what level our exotic, secret black project technology has attained. And I'm sure if you were flying around and you were driving out in the desert in 7980 and a stealth fighter or bomber flew over you and you had your radio on, you saw a UFO. Well, this brings me to another. You mentioned you're out in Vegas, Sarah, and it is a hotbed for technological development. Why don't you tell us about your relationship with Robert Bigelow and the NIDS, the National Institute of Discovery Science? I believe you were managing director there for a number of years. What is Bigelow's interest in UFOs and in the near-death experience realm? I understand he has a very, very avid interest in NDEs, related possibly to the passing of his son, I've heard. Why don't you give us just kind of a thumbnail sketch on how you became involved with NIDS, and then we'll go into some of the projects that NIDS has been involved with.
Well, NIDS was another serendipitous event. I was actually hosting a small meeting at my house in Santa Fe talking about alternative energy sources and things like this. It was a private group at the house, and over a weekend. And Sunday morning, we're in the kitchen getting ready to. I lived in Santa Fe as opposed to Los Alamos, and getting ready to head to the Albuquerque airport, and the phone rings, and this guy says, hi, I'm Robert Bigelow. I've heard about you. Have you got anything interesting going on? I said, well,
tell you what, that's so interesting, I'm going to make it a cliffhanger. And we're going to have the second part of that question in a moment after we pause to take care of some business. Dr. John Alexander joining us. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Ray Perkins, a reclusive veteran burned out from the Gulf War, lives tortured by relentless, perplexing nightmares. Nightmares of a horrific battle in deep space and of a mysterious woman suffering in agony for her devastated world. A woman not yet born, calling across centuries to him. Then, a coincidence leads him to his destiny, his chance to alter the universe. Attack of the Rockoids. The former fiction editor for Star Wars and Indiana Jones, Robert Simpson, writes, "The soul of the novel Attack of the Rockoids lies in its heart and passion for building a convincing tale of a love that spans the galaxy. A thrilling story. Attack of the Rockoids is available now. Read a sample chapter and get a special discount off of the cover price at our website, rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com. Attack of the Rockoids, a novel in the grand science fiction tradition.
This is Alex Jones with 5 good reasons you should consider buying a solar power generator. Number 1, new climate legislation could easily double or triple your electric bill. Number 2, our new energy czar wants to control how much power your electric company allows you to have. It's true. Total government control of electricity in the name of smart grid technology is coming. Number 3, in some areas of the country, the power grid is dangerously overloaded. And now, new socialist legislation is only compounding the problem. Number 4, dangerous weather is always a threat to local grids. Every year, thousands of families lose their power from weather-related outages. Number 5, a solar power generator provides powerful backup insurance and peace of mind. Folks, I really believe in the solar power generators offered by Solutions from Science, one of my oldest sponsors. You can get more information at www.mysolarbackup.com. That's mysolarbackup.com. Remember, the government doesn't own the sun, so go to mysolarbackup.com or call 1-877-327-0365.
This special announcement is brought to you by Renaissance Charge. Have you ever wondered if you could make your car run on 100% electric power for free? It is now possible. How about a simple device that is both a super efficient motor and a free energy generator at the same time? What if this could also be used to restore useless batteries and save you lots of money? Because our customers asked for it, we have organized a Renaissance Charge Conference Workshop on July 29th to July 31st at the beautiful Coeur d'Alene Resort in Idaho. Not only will you see these fascinating energizers, but you will be able to build some alongside genius inventor John Bedini. Participate in this truly historic event featuring our cutting-edge alternative energy Tesla technology. Register early for the best seats and advanced workshop by visiting rcharge.com. That's r-charge.com for details. Or call 208-772-4514. That's 208-772-4514.
Did you know that drinking pure, high alkaline water is one of the most important factors in maintaining high energy and vibrant health? Most experts agree that the water you drink should be at a pH level of 8 or higher. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops, available only at alkavision.com, combine a unique formula of only the most alkaline minerals. AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops alkalize your water, ridding the body of harmful toxins, and helps you regain health and energy. Alkalizing your water by simply adding 10 drops of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops helps the body rid itself of acidic waste, increases oxygen content, and raises the pH of your body to healthy levels. And bacteria and viruses cannot survive in an alkaline high pH environment. Order your bottle of AlkaVision Plasma pH Drops for only $29.95 at alkavision.com. That's ALKAvision.com. Or call 269-409-1776. 269-409-1776. Alkalize your body. Supercharge your health at alkavision.com today.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
This is Philip Rogno. You're listening to Paracast, one of the most informative shows out there. So listen closely.
We return, cliffhanger afoot. We have Dr. John Alexander as our guest. I'm Gene Steinberg. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. You're in the Paracast, and you got a call from Robert Bigelow. He found you somewhere. Tell us about that call.
Well, he had, just search around, and he was known for Sunday morning phone calls. That's when he catches up on stuff. So anyway, I said, heard you're interested in these areas, you got anything of interest, and then arranged to fly over and came over. We talked in general, and I had introduced him to, among things, Ferris Williams, who was working on some advanced theories, he had been at Los Alamos and was now elsewhere. And he had decided that he wanted to create an organization. And he did have intense personal interest in the two areas that you mentioned, continuation of consciousness and UFOs. UFOs came from some sightings that I know his parents had and grandparents. Continuation of consciousness, you mentioned the unfortunate incident that he had lost his son. One of the things that surprised me, I had actually seen him once before, but had not met him, and this was at the conference that John Mack had held at MIT. He and Dave Pritchard had one on abductions earlier, and he had shown up there. What I didn't know at the time is his son had just died. And so obviously this was an issue that was kind of forefront of his personal consciousness. So we discussed how to build such an organization. He actually looked at the Santa Fe Institute and thought about taking that over, just buying it. And he said, well, the problem there is you had Murray Gell-Mann, who was a Nobel physicist, and some pretty big egos, probably wouldn't work. So decided to create what became the National Institute of Discovery Science. Well, the one point that Bob and I disagreed on, and I agreed to come over on a part-time basis. I had just retired a second time from University of California, which actually runs the National Lab. And what I proposed was that we ought to get together and collect a lot of observations, and from that develop what the organization ought to look like. Being an engineer, Bob picked up his pen and went over and says, we got these two fields, and here are the sub-elements under each one. And following the golden rule, we did it his way, of course. But no, I would correct, I was not the director. We actually brought in Colm Kelleher, who did a phenomenal job as the guy who ran things from day to day. Again, I was on basically a half-time basis because I was continuing to do work, particularly in non-lethal weapons and other areas for the government. So I've always had multifaceted interests, if you will. So anyway, from that, we created it. One of the misperceptions, I think, has to do with Skinwalker Ranch. That's actually a working ranch, but had heard about it, and some very strange things going on. And I actually
I was one of the first investigators up there, by the way. I was there. I was the one that actually gave, Tom Gorman, Terry Sherman, Bigelow's number, also the number of Lawrence Rockefeller, and before he could make the call to see if these gentlemen would be interested in buying the ranch and doing something with it, similar to what NIDS eventually did, Robert Bigelow found out about the UFO sightings up there and went ahead and called him on his own.
Well, but I'd like to point out, and Chris, you're well aware of this, that the issues there were not just UFOs. I mean, the kinds of incidents that went on there are just kind of mind-boggling. And hence this gets back to my thing about we ought to be looking at things broader rather than labeling them up front and then setting certain expectations about what the parameters are. I think that's been one of the fatal flaws in the field.
Yep.
Is that,
they got the blinders on.
Yeah, we say we're only going to study this much, and you say a lot of other stuff that's related to this. As some know, I keep throwing out the line. Maybe somebody will bite sooner or later to do a step-back conference where we can get people who have had broad exposure and have them get together and just put up on a board, and we call them monstergrams. Here are the observations, but without assigning values to them. In other words, they're not UFOs or poltergeist or near-death or whatnot. To say, this is what we see, and then in stepping back and then doing the macro pattern analysis and say, how do these pieces go together? Or do they? I mean, maybe they don't. My notion is that consciousness is a very important piece of whatever it is that we're exploring.
Right. We can't even define consciousness, yet alone factor it into all these mysteries. One of the things towards the end of the book that you mention is your idea of precognitive sentient phenomena and the way that these, especially the Skinwalker Ranch would be a classic illustration of this, where the phenomena tends to be one step ahead of the researchers and tends to play with you. And you actually use my term, the trickster. You're one of the first people that I've seen actually equate some of this stuff to the trickster in the sense of it is playing with it. It's jerking us around. And of course, we've talked with George Knapp here on the Paracast, and he related the story of the camera being focused on another camera, security camera, and having the one camera go down and have all the wires pulled out, and the other camera didn't pick up anything. Now, how do you explain that?
Well, I've included that case in the book because it's so spectacular. And a classic example, you had camera 1 looking at camera 2. You're on a second and a third time lapse, 24/7. You know when it happened, and it's just, it literally can't happen. All of the things that happened could not have happened between frames. And to make matters, more complex, is the cattle at the time of the incident were kind of milling around, and what we knew is anytime somebody approached the cattle or dogs or anything, they would scatter, and did not happen.
Well, speaking of cattle, the very disturbing incident when the rancher and his wife were out in the field checking on calves, and they were literally in broad daylight in the same field within maybe 300 yards of another cow and calf they just checked, and they turn around and go back, and the darn thing has been eviscerated, really dramatically, with no evidence of what had done it, except that it looked like a sharp implement, like a knife had been used on the animal.
That is another case. Yeah, that's another case I've included in the book because it is so spectacular. Most cattle mutilations, you don't know when it occurs. I mean, people say, how can that happen? Well, it turns out that, ranchers sometimes don't see cattle for a month or so if they're out grazing on their own. So when you run across a dead cow, you don't know exactly when it happened. This happened within, 45 to 50 minutes. And in broad daylight, open field, and one of the things that I mentioned in there, they said, well, everybody talks about the blood ran into the ground. So I had the guys go to a butcher shop and come out with blood, pour it on the ground, and, you could go by weeks later and say, you know what, blood was poured on the ground there. Yeah. And at the site where the cattle, this young calf had been mutilated, no blood.
Yeah, and we're talking 5-6 gallons of blood and fluids that were missing.
You cannot exsanguinate that rapidly, and again, in an open field, And
within sight of the rancher.
Remember this is an area where they shoot cattle rustlers. I mean, so
they don't mess
around.
The
idea that you're going to do this in broad daylight is just not happening.
Well, exactly. Now, here's something I haven't heard mentioned much. This was told to me by...
here's something that we have to mention right now.
Okay.
We have Dr. John Alexander. The book is UFOs, Myths and Conspiracies and Realities, all that stuff in one big bucket. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Don't complain about your cable bill going up and up and up. Do something about it. Grab a pencil and jot down this special number, 1-877-804-MY-TV. The more cable TV rates go up, the better digital satellite TV looks. So, disable the cable and get more of your favorite channels in 100% digital quality for less money. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV right now to sign up for packages starting as low as $19.99 and up to 4 rooms. And there's no equipment to buy. That includes your free HD TV upgrade, your free DVR upgrade, and your free professional installation. And the best part, the pristine digital picture and sound. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. So, what are you waiting for? Pull out your major credit or debit card. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. 1-877-804-MY-TV. Disable the cable, cut costs, and get more. Call 1-877-804-MY-TV. 1-877-804-MY-TV.
For centuries, silver has been used as a powerful natural antibiotic, and as a listener to this station, you probably already know the benefits of using colloidal silver. With so many websites to choose from, finding a reputable, patriotic company with great products at affordable prices can be a difficult task. Introducing UtopiaSilver.com. UtopiaSilver.com carries the best, most effective, and most affordable colloidal silver and colloidal gold products in the industry. UtopiaSilver.com also carries products to fit your lifestyle, including weight loss, immune system defense, cleanses, herbs, joint and bone care, and much more. First-time customers using promo code GCN50 will receive 50% off all colloidal products. Visit us today at Utopia Silver, that's UTOPIA Silver, utopiasilver.com, or call 888-213-4338. That's 888-213-4338. utopiasilver.com, taking back America's healthcare one American at a time.
Going solar for cheap is as easy as 1, 2, 3. If you want to go solar but thought the setup costs were too high, now you can build your own solar panels for less than $200. Don't laugh! We've sold over 45,000 solar do-it-yourself kits. Watch our introduction video at 123cheapsolarvideo.com. The video is free, but it won't last long. Save money on electric bills and get off the grid. Go to 123cheapsolarvideo.com right now. Our website again is 123cheapsolarvideo.com.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
If you owe the IRS money you can't pay, then listen carefully, because you already know that the problem won't go away by itself. You can get help today from the leading tax expert in the country, Dan Pilla.
Hi, I'm Dan Pilla. The IRS isn't going to just forget about you. Right now, the IRS is hiring thousands of tax collectors to go after delinquent accounts just like yours. That's why you need to take action today, and I can help. I take a simple but proven approach to solving your tax debt problem. First, I stabilize collections so you don't have to worry about wage and bank levies. Next, I build a detailed plan to get your debt reduced to the fullest extent possible, sometimes even eliminated. Finally, I work with you every step of the way to get your problem solved once and for all. So call now for a free consultation. Call 1-800-346-6829.
Dan Pilla will solve your tax problem, guaranteed. He's helped thousands of people, and he can help you too. Call us today at 800-346-6829. That's 800-34-NO-TAX.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
You've entered another dimension. You've entered the Paracast.
Our guest is Dr. John Alexander. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. You are here in the Paracast, and Chris has been doing some hard questioning of Dr. Alexander with regard to the investigations involving the Skinwalker Ranch, the involvement of Robert Bigelow, and maybe later we're going to talk about, if you have any knowledge of it, Dr. Alexander. Chris, you want to pick up from here?
Sure. We could do a whole show just on the Skinwalker Ranch case, John. Honestly, it's one of the most important, I think, pivotal cases ever, because we have a world-class scientific effort that's monitoring the area. And this brings to mind a question that's been on the minds of a lot of people that have been very interested in this ongoing case, and that is, are we ever going to see any more about this case? Are we going to see papers published? Are we going to see any other books? One of the disappointments of Hunt for the Skinwalker, George Ann Combs' book, was that there was no real data in there in terms of photographs, graphs, any sort of identification of micropatterns, that sort of thing. There's no mention of the strange metallic rods that were found on a mutilated cow, which I found very intriguing, that Terry told me about.
But the rods were examined. I mean, that's one. It's interesting because I've seen that bantered about on the blogs. It was element 115. What absolute nonsense!
Well, yeah.
These were from a lamp. Basically, they were lights, old light systems that were there. That one is a classic case of how the information gets so grossly distorted. A, defies common sense, and B, it just gets out of hand, and people pick it up and start running with it. And
if those things had been element 115, you would have needed a forklift to pick them up.
Well, no. If those ever exist, they come into physical reality for tiny fractions of a second. They're so unstable.
Right.
You certainly would not have metal rods like that.
Right.
And again, we knew absolutely what they were.
Are we going to see anything? One of the complaints that you constantly hear about Robert Bigelow being a very well-heeled private individual, obviously he has rights to retain the confidentiality of any data that his team gathers. But do you think he feels any sort of compulsion to share with other researchers like myself? And I could rattle off a list of other objective, fairly, I think, grounded researchers that possibly could help. And if some of this data was shared with a qualified members of the research community, perhaps more heads are better than one. Perhaps we can maybe solve a couple of these puzzles. Does he have, to your knowledge, does he have any inclination to do this?
Short answer is no.
Right.
No. Yeah. No, there were a number of papers that were up on the NIDS website, and
there were, and they're very good too.
That's, as far as I know, has been taken down. So I'm not sure that you'll see it repeated. Now, Bob has gone on to other areas. He has some minor interest, I think, in, he keeps his finger in the pie here. But remember, what they're doing is vitally important, and that is that, Bigelow Aerospace, most people are not aware that you have two satellites circling the Earth as we speak that are owned by him,
right.
private individual, not government.
And NASA has contracted him to provide modules, I think, for the International Space Station. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Eventually, and it looks like the business is getting ready to expand again. He had shot off the two. Now, interestingly, in order to put them into orbit, he had to go to the Russians, and they had launched out of Ukraine. One of the problems there, of course, is that the Russians recognized that they, kind of had a lock on the market and quadrupled the prices. And what I wanted to mention that, the forward, the introduction to my book is written by Burt Rutan. And as we mentioned, he's the one who circumnavigated the world and won the N-Series X Prize and is just a world-class aerospace engineer. And he had done, when they put Mike Melville into space the first time, he had created Spaceship One, the White Knight, to lift it to orbit, the station refueling, command and control, 2 rocket engine designs, and did all that for $25 million. Bob is doing the same thing in space, and I had access to the numbers. I had actually written this in Winning the War, when I had warned that we had a very narrow window to maintain our advantage, which we have since relinquished. My guesstimate was that he had a 30-to-1 cost advantage over NASA, and that was based on cubic space available. What both Bigelow and Burt Rutan have been doing is attacking the business model, and says, you don't need governments to keep you in space, and it can be done much more effectively with private industry. In my view, that's huge. Even compared to UFOs, that's huge. I mean, that's here today, very practical. So,
getting back to the ranch, and I do. Before I get back to the ranch, I do. I admire Bigelow's dedication and the amount of money he's investing in this effort, and I do wish him the best of success in this endeavor. But let's get back to the ranch again before we move on. Back in 2004, was contacted by a researcher who had heard a rumor that Jack Sarfati was looking into something he was told while in England at a dinner with Nick Cook and Uri Geller about a a possible murders of security personnel on the ranch in Utah. And Sarfati was looking into this and trying to get to the bottom of it. He didn't tell my friend not to say anything. So the friend, of course, asked me. I made just an innocent remark on a small little bulletin board. And for the next 2 weeks, had to withstand the wrath of Sarfati. And last year, he came forward after Robert Bigelow made a very interesting comment in a New York Times article about aliens and the possibility of them being hostile. And to your knowledge, has anyone suffered any sort of ill effects from being on the ranch in close proximity to what we both agree are very strange, phenomenal events?
No. Now, there is the story. When Terry sold the ranch, there was an incident that happened a short time before that. And some bad things happened, but it wasn't to people. He had these blue balls that he said were floating at a very low level. And over.
I was on the phone with Terry when this happened, by the way.
Well,
I literally was on the phone.
The dogs. Yeah.
Yeah, when they got melted.
Yeah.
In Coleman and George's book,
think,
they missed.
No, there again, there's an assumption here. Is that as they went off, and then he didn't find them, and the assumption is that the little grease spots, if you will, were the dogs.
Yep.
And that, as you know, scared him because particularly of his kids, said, they might get antagonistic and have bad things happen.
Yeah, I was on the phone literally with Terry during that incident, and I was very dismayed to see the date as being incorrect. I'm a meticulous documentarian when it comes to these types of reports, and Colm and George had the date April of 95 when it actually occurred in August 96, which I pointed out in a review of the book. I love the book. I recommend it to people. But, you never know how accurate certain things are. And, this rumor that Sarfati, was chasing down and publicly announced it last year came from a fairly good source. So I felt obliged to get an official response from you on that, because if anybody would know about something like that, it would be you. Obviously, it'd be very difficult to cover up deaths of that nature, but I just figured it was
certainly not. Yeah, and one of the problems you hear about it, you get into murders and you can go off in a whole new conspiracy stream there, and you go, but
yep,
where are the bodies?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where are the bodies?
If you have a question or a comment about the Paracast, write us, news@theparacast.com. Once again, that's news@theparacast.com. Before we go into all those conspiracy streams, I've got some of my own. We're talking to Dr. John Alexander. The co-host is... Oh, listen to that noise. They're after me. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you own an Apple iPhone and love to listen to your favorite programs on GCN, I've got good news for you. I'm proud to announce that GCN has a brand new iPhone app available for our dedicated listeners at GCNlive.com. Listen to your favorite hard-hitting GCN programs live or on demand right on your iPhone. And the best part? The GCN iPhone app can be yours absolutely free. Download the iPhone app today by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We return with Dr. John Alexander. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. You're in the Paracast. Chris, let's just pick up again briefly on that point you were about to make before our break, and then we have loads and loads, did I say loads of questions from our listeners that they want to ask. So let's go from there.
Well, my point is this. We both agree, I think, and I'm sure the scientists and others who were up at the ranch during its heyday in the late 90s to about 9/11. It's when most of the activity appears to have happened, although we don't know for sure about what has happened since. Recently, there have been rumors, and I do have sources up in the area that have talked about a dog-headed humanoid creature that has been sighted on a number of occasions. Now, these are sightings that are in the area there of the ranch, but not directly on the ranch, to my knowledge. In fact, one of these stories comes from Fort Duchesne.
Well, Chris, and as you know, this is an area phenomena. It is not just bound by the ranch or the borders of the ranch per se.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I was going to ask is, do you feel that there's an interconnectedness between these phenomenal events, number one? And number two, do you feel that the Native American interpretation should be listened to a little bit more than just going with the strict scientific paradigm? Do you think that there's any sort of cultural knowledge that may share some insight and give us a little added information with which to investigate these events?
Well, remember that the Native American population in the area has been there a lot longer than the whites. And I do think they ought to be listened to. You know, there's a lot to be learned from folklore and where things come from. Unfortunately, most of our technologically advanced societies, we tend to discount those stories. And sometimes it's, you know, there's a kernel of truth that's been expanded upon greatly. But certainly areas that do need to be listened to. You had asked the area about the related phenomenon. This, again, gets back to the step back. But that's because of UFOs. Yes, UFOs are seen there. But so are, and all of the things that you have described. And you go, in my view, it's like, I can't use the acronym, but the WTF. How do you figure out how these pieces go together?
Exactly, which is something that I've been working on very diligently. I've come up with an idea that we have a causal mechanism that I refer to as the trickster, but that's another whole show. Thank you so much for sharing some of your insight about the ranch. I think we have a bunch of questions that our forum listeners have posted. Some of them are a little bit more serious than others. The first set of questions I think you might get a chuckle out of. Is your wife really a vampire? Have you done ayahuasca like she has? And what experiences have you had? And then there's the whole idea of explaining about the aviary and some of the misconceptions I think that have sprung up around that particular term. Do you want to handle those?
Well, the short one, no, Victoria is not a vampire. I wonder where that one comes from.
I had dinner with her, and she didn't try to bite me, so.
Yeah, I know. Actually, there was a BBC interview that was done. Again, the topic was non-lethal weapons, and they almost came up with that, like, who are these dark people that slunk off into the dark? No, we were in a hotel in Washington. I mean, the reporter was telling us how scared he was. Well, if this is a war reporter and he's scared in a hotel in Washington, I'd hate to see what he'd do in a real war zone.
Well, what about ayahuasca and the whole role of psychedelics as a potential investigative tool? You and I briefly touched on this at the conference. You asked about my knowledge about ayahuasca. Dimethyltryptamine, as Terence McKenna pointed out for many years, does appear to open a doorway to another aspect of consciousness and reality. And I do know that you have been to Brazil and you have met ayahuasqueros. And in fact, you're going, I think, in the not-too-distant future to address a conference down there. What are your feelings about that?
Well, first of all, I'm not a participant. even though I would point out that ayahuasca, and it's mostly in Peru, though we have been in Brazil and Ecuador as well. Not only is it legal there, it is part of the national heritage. So their approach to this as a country is very, very different than we approach it here. It certainly seems to open some very interesting channels, and this actually ties into what we've been discussing. Some of the shamans that I've met there, I mean, these are phenomenal people, and some of them are in positions where they've never made nor received a phone call. I mean, you get out and where tribes are hunter-gatherers still. Hard for the Western society to imagine this. And yet their knowledge of biology and herbology is just,
Well, it's dazzling.
Not
it's stunning.
Comparable, yeah. And the point that I would have is that, we talk about the spirit world and the world we live in as two separate and distinct entities. For the shamans, they move seamlessly back and forth. And I've done a lot of interviews, and they will be describing things, and you have to say, no, wait a minute. Are we talking about consensus reality as we know it, or are we talking, these spirit realms and whatnot? Because, again, they don't see a separation between the two.
No, and there's accounts of just obvious telepathy that has occurred during monitored ayahuasca sessions down there, where everybody does have shared hallucinations, for lack of a better term, although I think that is a woefully inadequate term in this regard. But do you feel that this is a possible investigative tool that should with strict parameters and obviously checks and balances, could possibly be?
Well, the problem is, that if you just mention drugs here, Americans tend to go into a low hover, and I think we have definitely thrown the baby out with the bathwater. One of the guys that I worked with early on was John Lilly, who, of course, had done the LSD research, legally and whatnot. Just a phenomenal guy. And, we're so afraid of things. You're actually hitting into an area we might want to discuss longer, because the problem that I see, and this bleeds over into near-death experience and religion and all those things, is the institutions are scared to death of direct experience. And remember, I mentioned the difference between religiousness and spirituality that Elizabeth had me change. And the point here was that these spiritual people have these experiences, and they have direct experience, and that's very hard to control. So there is a control aspect to this from institutional standpoints, be they government institutions or religious institutions.
Well, one of the things that psychedelics have a tendency to do is reveal the inner truth about things and also break down cultural boundaries, both of which are not necessarily going to serve the government agenda very well. So that could possibly be one reason why there's been such a boot stamped down on psychedelic research. We do know from the past that psychedelics have been instrumental in changing the lives of chronic alcoholics. They've recidivism in prisons. Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert did an incredible study in the early 60s with LSD and prison inmates. It is potentially a very fruitful avenue for mental health at the very least. But having been someone who I proudly say I was quite a psychonaut when I was much younger,
You're admitting to your wayward youth, Chris O'Brien.
Absolutely. Proudly.
Okay, I will get into more of Chris O'Brien's wayward youth, maybe Dr. John Alexander's wayward youth, but not Gene Steinberg's wayward youth, because you don't want to hear the details. We have Dr. John Alexander joining us. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in
the Paracast.
You expect professional service from your doctor, your accountant, and even the girl who takes your morning coffee order. Why not from your domain registrar, too? Namecheap.com provides stellar service with no sneaky upselling. We offer more features and security options for your website than there are ways to order a latte. And new domains come with WhoisGuard to protect your personal info. At Namecheap.com, you can get your domain for as low as $2.99. Now is a great time to get to know Namecheap.com.
For 58 years, Fate has provided true reports of the strange and unknown. Fate brings you the latest in all aspects of the paranormal, like angels and miracles, psychic phenomena, ghosts, UFOs, and much, much more. To receive your complimentary Fate magazine, call now at 1-800-728-2730 or visit their website at www.fatemag.com. That's 1-800-728-2730. What are you waiting for? Your fate awaits.
As many people know, ever since President Nixon took us off the gold standard, the U.S. dollar has been devaluating. What people don't know, however, is how this directly affects your personal finances. Is there a way to protect your portfolios from losing value? The answer to all of this is gold and silver. They both have maintained their purchasing power for 6,000 years. If you had $100,000 in cash and $100,000 in gold and silver back in 1913 and kept them until now, your cash would have the buying power of only $4,800, but your gold and silver would have the buying power of $3 million. The answer to protecting your assets is simple. Call John Ballman today at 1-800-686-2237, extension 169. Get all your questions answered before your money is worth zero. Call 1-800-686-2237, extension 169. Take action today while we still accept paper dollars for gold. That's 1-800-686-2237, extension 169.
This message starts with a great offer from Big Berkey Water Filters because we don't want you drinking dangerous water 1 minute longer. Right now, purchase any filter system from BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com to get your choice of 2 Berkey Sport bottles, a KDF shower filter, a set of fluoride filters, or our new Cyclass spigot absolutely free. Why do this? Because over 60% of municipal water is fluoridated, and at less than 2 cents per gallon, Berkey Water Filters purify both treated and untreated water, removing dangerous chlorine, fluoride, and other contaminants. Big Berkey water filters are powerful enough to purify stagnant pond water, so they're perfect for rainwater collection systems and emergency preparedness. Remember, Big Berkey includes free shipping on every order over $50, and GCN listeners get 5% off all ceramic filter systems. Visit BIGBERKEY waterfilters.com or call 877-99-BERKEY. That's BigBerkeyWaterFilters.com or call today 1-877-99-BERKEY.
The largest part of gaining radiant health is detoxification. You can drink ionized water, cleanse your intestines, eat a perfect diet, and even take lots of quality supplements and in many instances only make minimal progress. What is the key to detoxifying your body of mercury, heavy metals, chemicals, and drugs? It is glutathione. Glutathione is the master antioxidant used to detoxify your entire body. It stops free radicals, keeps cells young, and reduces inflammation. One World Whey protein powder may be able to raise your glutathione production by 64% or more. One World Whey is more effective than any other whey protein powder on the market because it is unheated and from grass-fed cows. All other, quote, cold-processed whey protein powders have been heated and damaged by 15% or more. One World Whey comes in 3 delicious flavors. Call 888-988-3325. That's 888-988-3325 or visit oneworldwhey.com. That's oneworldwhey.com.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
We want to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And if you want to catch up on past episodes, we have hundreds of shows for you to download direct from theparacast.com. That's theparacast.com. Or check us out on iTunes.
Just to remind you, on the Paracast with Gene Steinberg and Chris O'Brien, we have Dr. John Alexander, and we have been also asking your questions, getting your comments about the interview that we're doing today. We can't always guarantee that we'll get to all the questions, but we'll try to get to the most interesting ones. And if we don't get to the question you want, it's Chris's fault, right?
Okay, yeah, blame it on me.
Because
Maybe
you're
we can
there.
Get John to come on our forums and answer some if we don't cover them all. Okay, here's some more. This is from Blowfish, one of our big posters. He's posted almost 1,000 times on the forum. First of all, what are your thoughts, John, on Ingo Swann's book, Penetration? And did you ever see any indications of past or future nuclear explosions in space? Now, basically what he's talking about is your work with remote viewing teams. And he also asks if your remote viewers ever had any strange awareness, quote-unquote, encounters or shadow people or other foreign type of what appear to be intelligences during remote viewing sessions.
Yeah, well, let me clarify a point. I was not with the remote viewing unit. I did some other things in parallel. We have since become friends, and I knew some of the people then, knew more of them now. Ingo is a personal friend. There are areas that we sort of agree to disagree. Interestingly, in the book that's mentioned, he has been, I gave him a copy earlier. I saw him in November when I was in New York, and gave him a pre-publication when it was still in galleys, and he has been telling people all over that they really need to read it. Don't know. I mean, he just comes up with things from time to time that are very hard to discern. Unfortunately, he is not doing more remote viewing now, but he was certainly one of the best, and the whole field owes him a great deal because he's the one who came up with the matrix concept, which allowed this to be really a more trainable skill.
Yeah, exactly. So you weren't actually directly involved in any sort of remote viewing work then, is what you're saying?
Not very far about in the units, no. The work that I did was more, I did a lot of stuff with psychokinesis. Some know about the white cell, remote perception tests that we did. That was separate from the programs that they finally know as Stargate.
Well, here's an interesting one. This is from J.J. Flash, who is a recent addition to our forum family. And he reposts an article that was written by, I think, a Sharon Weinberger in the Washington Post in 2007. And it talks about a gentleman named Harlan Gerard, who personally holds you responsible for the voices in his head.
Well,
I mean,
when we
that you did something to someone that they resent you for, or maybe they like voices in their head.
Yeah. First encountered him in the 92, 93 time frame when I held the first non-lethal weapons conference at John Hopkins Applied Physics Lab in Maryland. And they showed up, and it was a classified meeting, so they couldn't get in, so we were picketed. And then he asked me to have hold a minute of silence for the 50,000 people we had killed in high-power microwave experiments. And you go, wow, that's as many folks as died in Vietnam. Yeah. Where are they? I mean, it just defies common sense. And actually, 2 years ago, I'll be going back to Germany in a couple months, but 2 years ago at the biannual conference, some people got in to talk about these issues. I get picketed internationally there, and it's on the same issue, and Harlan was actually one of the people who flew over from the U.S. for it. My point would be, the much more practical or pragmatic answer is that actually 0.5% of the people could be legitimately classified as paranoid. Now, that may not sound like a lot until you say in the U.S., that's 1.5 million people. So when you put it in real numbers,
it's a little scary.
There's a lot of crazy folks out there, That's kind of where it is. But more than you might anticipate.
Yes, and I have encountered one or two. Fortunately, I don't have a target on my backside like you apparently do with your work history and your outspoken nature, which we're really enjoying here, and we really thank you for being on. Here's another question. This is from Kandinsky, who's another longtime poster on the Paracast, and he mentions the infamous Gulf Breeze 6 incident with Lance Davis and the bunch that went AWOL in Germany back in 1990. Right. And what do you make of that whole scenario, being given messages through a Ouija board that they have to save the world and going AWOL? And why were these Army members allowed to, leave the Army without prejudice? Can you share some light on that?
I think we just answered that in the last question. The Army is not immune. One of the key people that was with Harlan actually was a warrant officer who had, been through the system. Now, I mentioned that she had come with certified papers because when they let her go, it was a medical discharge. And she was, in fact, one of the cute articles that showed up was that he claimed that people had snuck into her apartment and put her white mice in the blender. And I got a note. This was in a newspaper article. It says, John, did you put the mice in the blender? No. But like I say, there are no limits to crazy.
This is true. Here's a rather long question, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase it. We haven't talked about Men Who Stare at Goats, the John Ronson book, and then subsequent dark comedy films starring George Clooney and Kevin Spacey, who some people suggest may have been loosely modeled on you, that character. This is the first time, by the way, we've had a guest on who has inspired a character in a movie, or allegedly inspired a character for a mainstream Hollywood film. But the question broadly says is, what do you think of that particular depiction of what was going on with the Earth?
I'm not sure where we're at, because this may take just a little bit. The point here is that in the book, it is unambiguous who we are. And when the book came out, we are in there by name. So you don't have to guess who we are. I enter, I think, on page 44 and stay throughout the rest of the book. The Jeff Bridges character was a one-on-one for a good friend of mine, Jim Channon, who really did create the 1st Earth Battalion. The guy is a brilliant Imagineer. One of the problems I had when the book first came out was I could identify 16 people, and I actually denied meeting John Ronson, and he sent me an email. It was something that was so specific that he must have been in my house. I went back, and sure enough, he had been here, but he was like a grip, okay? He had come with John Sargent, who was a filmmaker, whom I did interview with on several occasions, who was known, and I did talk to him. I had no idea it was doing the book.
I'll tell you what, let's go into the Men Who Stare at Goats, and lots more out there. John Alexander joining us. I'm Gene Steinberg. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. You're in
the Paracast.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the Earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
We all know that Berkey water purification systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 5 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey water filtration systems. The Berkey Light systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light system today, complete with with 2 Black Berkey Elements for only $209, and the Berkey Guy will include 3 Sport Berkey water bottles and ship everything to you free of charge. That's right, 3 Sport Berkey water bottles and free shipping. An $87 value, yours free. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at GoBerkey.com. That's GoBerkey.com today.
There's mounting evidence suggesting that there are people, governments, corporations, and whole professions intent on short-circuiting humanity's well-being. GMO, food legislation protecting big agriculture, the attempted elimination of vitamins and alternative medicines, it seems their hand has been tipped. They want to dictate your health, wealth, and your longevity. Whatever the outcome, we have a solution. Wild edible food. Why worry about food when all has been provided? We imagine that we were ejected from the garden and never invited back, but the garden's still here. There is an endless wild abundance which grows all over our green earth, just waiting for you to wake up and see it. Let author Linda Runyon teach you how to see, know, get, prepare, store, and eat wild edible food. Save money, add nutrition, and ignore the noise when you go shopping in nature's supermarket. Go to ofthefield.com and get started today. Or call 1-888-51-EAT-FREE. That's ofthefield.com or call 1-888-51-EAT-FREE and begin to see a different world.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
My name's John, and I've been having problems with my blood pressure for years. My doctor's tried everything without much success. I heard about Extendovite from a friend and thought, why not give it a try? It's been 3 months now. My doctor's very pleased with how my blood pressure's finally coming down. I have a lot more energy than I've had in a long time. It's working for me.
For 12 years now, I've been helping people. My name is Don Wiskin, and I want you to know Extendovite works. If you're looking for more energy or just want to be as healthy as you can, now is the time to join the growing list of real people benefiting from Extendovite. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit our website at heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
This is Leslie Kane, and I'm with the Coalition for Freedom of Information, and you are listening to the Paracast.
Dr. John Alexander is our guest. We're talking about the men who stare at goats, and that gets to be interesting. I want to ask a couple of questions before we go back to the comments from our forum members at forum.theparacast.com. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. So let me ask you the really hard question here. The book, The Men Who Stare at Goats, how close is that to what we saw in the movies?
Well, let's say they took about 5% truth and wrote a book, and from that they extrapolated to a movie. In fact, I have
half of 1% the way movies go.
Yeah, we haven't mentioned, I do have a website, www.johnbalexander.com. And I've actually addressed this in a fair amount of detail. I go in there as to what was real and what was not real. The not real, for sure, is staring at goats and having them die. And they had bought into a story that, without checking it. And certainly the LSD stuff in that time frame is just an absolute non-starter. They did use non-lethal weapons, remote viewing. There's an incident in there where Clooney walks into a room and the computers crash. Now, he has that in Area 51 that really happened in Augsburg, Germany. That was Lynn Buchanan. And so there are a number of little vignettes that are sort of true. The thing that got me, and probably longer than you want to go into here, was to why staring and whatnot might have been done for some very practical purposes. There was a guy by the name of Nick Rowe, an American hero, who was captured in Vietnam, held for 5 years. We got him back again during a raid in '68. Later went on to run the SERI, the Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape Course. And he had heard about Dim Mak, or the Death Touch, and really did send some people out to look at that. But his premise was, after 5 years of practical experience, that you could influence people by staring, not to kill them, but, can I just get them to walk a little bit farther in one direction or not look at things while you're doing something else? And again, the background information on that is posted on my website, and it's also on Jimmy Chan and his First Earth Battalion.
When people click on your name at theparacast.com, John B. Alexander, Ph.D., that will go right to your site. We make it easy for them to find it. Chris, any more questions left?
Yes, I've actually got a number of them. One of the things that is mentioned in this particular long, about 4-paragraph question, it might be inappropriate in a Paracast interview, but you might ask him if the reputation his wife has for literally never eating anything is true. Now, John, I must say, I was at dinner with you twice with Victoria, and she never ate a morsel. So
that's right.
So I'm gonna talk about this, and also her self-description as a practicing witch, which I'm not sure is a proper term that she uses. But he says, bearing in mind all the other weird stuff that John is into, that might also be true too. But best steer clear of that. And of course, this is a Paracast, so we have to ask the questions.
Yeah, the answer is she's not a breatharian, but she defies everything you have ever learned about nutrition. We've been married almost 20 years and is on a normal diet that is less than 600 calories and survives quite well on it. And never eats in public. At the moment, her diet, and has been for many, many years, is egg whites. I would also, medically, don't try this.
Don't try this at home, listeners.
Everything that you've heard about nutrition. For her, it works.
My goodness. Well, how about her interest in the more natural or nature-based belief systems, which is commonly misreferred to as witchcraft? She does seem to have some pretty eclectic interests in nature religions. What are your feelings about spirituality that harkens back to more of a, archaic revival, if you will?
I would say that's a misinterpretation. Totally. She is interested in saints and some of the phenomenal incidents around saints. As you mentioned, she does explore ayahuasca, but not. I think there is some mythology out there that's misplaced about any of the darker arts, if you will.
Oh boy, aren't there? That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Let's see. We've got another question about Colonel Corso. Let's quickly revisit the Corso scenario. What do you think his motivations were, first of all, to come forward, and second of all, to allow a co-writer to embellish his original accounts, which, by the way, Open Minds, the organization that put on the recent UFO Congress, has published his original manuscript, which I understand is quite different from the final version of the book the day after Roswell. What do you think his motivations were to come forward? Some people have surmised that perhaps it was just to maybe get some notoriety in his later years and potentially have a bestseller so that he could generate some money for his family. What are your feelings on that?
The name of the chapter in my book is called The Corso Conundrum. And it's specifically because of this. Like I say, he was a great guy. We knew him, as I said, before the book ever came out. Bob had actually offered to help him get it in there, which you didn't mention, and George Knapp was supposed to have been the co-author. And that's how we learned about him, because this had come about, long before Bill Burns came on the scene. He was who he said he was. He was in most of those places. He did good things at the appropriate level for where he was at. And why, I just don't know. I mean, that always bugged me. We tried to help him get a movie, Unfortunately, he couldn't do it. Steven Seagal is a personal friend of mine, and he wanted to make the movie, and we had Phil out to try and do that. And it turns out that his agent had kept the rights, so Phil couldn't sign the deal. And
that's about it.
One of the last things, I will say that one of the last things he told me when we were at the house there, because he was writing some more, and he was not computer literate. So as you've seen, if you go on the website, and you're certainly correct about how different the book is from the original manuscript, but there are handwritten parts, there's typed, and kind of clues together, if you will. Well, what he said was he needed to do another book to correct the errors that were in the original. And he had received, and I mean, people have accused me of speaking ill of the dead and that, and I said, I haven't said anything I didn't say to him directly. And because in publishing that letter, that is a letter that went to him right after the book came out. And again, 90-some errors, and many of them very, very significant.
Yes.
And demonstrably false. I mean, we're not talking interpretation. We're talking demonstrably false.
Therefore, he did not funnel secret alien technology into private industry. Not at all.
There's certainly no indication of that.
Okay, because that's the biggest thing. That's basically forgetting the fine details, forgetting whether it was night goggles or any of this other stuff, printed circuit boards.
Night vision is something that I know intimately. The guy who created Night Vision Lab was a personal friend of mine. Some of the work that I did, even though I was at INSCOM, was actually done at Night Vision Lab. I can tell you that alien eyeballs played absolutely no role in the development of any of our night vision systems.
I'll tell you what, our sponsors have eyeballs, and they're going to be very concerned if we don't give them a chance. John Alexander, Ph.D., joining us. I'm Gene Steinberg. The co-host is Chris O'Brien. You're in
the Paracast.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code NIGHTOWL. Use the coupon code NIGHTOWL to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's LEMKE soft.com. lemkesoft.com. LEMKE soft.com.
The food storage industry leader has done it again. Introducing FDG Clubs and Survival Bucks from the Freeze Dry Guy. For over 39 years, the Freeze Dry Guy has served various government agencies and the private sector with the finest in storable foods and emergency rations. If you've wanted to build emergency food supplies but couldn't afford it, now you can. Go to freezedryguy.com, click on products, and look for the Freeze Dry Guy Clubs to pay as you go. Now you can build food storage without going into debt. Choose from a payment range of $95 to $450 per month. Our clubs work with everyone's budget. Plus, when you join Freeze Dry Guy Clubs, you'll get additional rewards. For example, this month, get 10% back in Survival Bucks on all purchases in the Freeze Dry Guy product line, plus free shipping within the lower 48 states on any order amount. Hurry, go to freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. That's freezedryguy.com or call 866-404-3663. The Freeze Dry Guy, the best you can buy.
If you owe money to the IRS, you can't make the problem go away by yourself. But with the help of Dan Pilla, you can get your problem solved once and for all.
Hi, I'm Dan Pilla. For 30 years, I've helped thousands of people solve their tax debt problem, and I can help you solve yours too. We take a very simple but proven 3-step approach to solving your problem. First, we stabilize IRS collection actions so you don't have to worry about the IRS seizing your bank account or paycheck. Next, we build a comprehensive plan to get your tax debt reduced to the fullest extent possible, sometimes even completely eliminated. And finally, we work with you every step of the way to get your problem solved once and for all. Call us for a free consultation. Call 1-800-346-6829. We'll work together to get your problem solved, guaranteed.
Dan Pilla has been protecting taxpayers from the IRS for 3 decades, and he can help you too. Call us today at 800-346-6829. That's 800-34-NO-TAX.
How well and how fast does Heart and Body Extract work to improve blood circulation? Listen.
My name is Ellis, and I'm 66 years old, and I live in Jacksonville, Florida. 2 years ago, I was diagnosed as having clogged arteries. I had 70% blockage in one artery leading to my heart. They wanted me to go on Plavix, but I refused, knowing the negative side effects.
Heart and Body Extract is a unique balance, synergy, and proportion of herbs reaching from head to toe at maximum absorption around 95% at the cellular level.
Within the first month, I felt a dramatic difference. The heaviness in my legs was reduced, and within 2 months, I felt completely normal.
Your natural organic herbal formula for heart health is Heart and Body Extract. Heart and Body Extract comes with a 100% ironclad money-back guarantee. Details at hbextract.com or call 866-295-5305 for Heart and Body Extract. Call 866-295-5305, 866-295-5305 for Heart and Body Extract.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hello, this is John Burroughs, one of the witnesses to the Rendlesham UFO incident. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
Before we get back to our guests for this final segment, if you have a comment or a question about the Paracast, write us, news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. We read every letter we get. This is our final segment of our visit with Dr. John Alexander. The book is called UFOs, Myths, Conspiracies, and Realities. And by the way, neighbors, if you go to theparacast.com, our homepage, when you click on Dr. Alexander's name, you will go right to his website so you can check out some of the things that he has to write about. Chris O'Brien's the co-host. I'm Gene Steinberg. You're in the Paracast. Chris, any more questions left?
Well, we do.
Can I mention one thing?
Sure.
Yes.
When you go to the website, you'll find where I live most of the time, because there's a number of government pubs and things like that that are up there, and things like the convergence of special operations forces and military SWAT and irregular warfare in Africa. There's a book in there that just came out last year that I have a chapter in on the future of biological warfare, and I mentioned Kit Green has a chapter in that book as well. So, like I say, very eclectic, and UFOs is a piece of it.
Let's look at the overall picture here. Because of your association with the government, we have to ask you here. Okay, number one, you're not violating any secrecy regulations or commitments here in talking about this stuff, right?
In the book, I at the back, have a comment there that says, anybody who's got information about this that wants to get it out, let me know. Because while some people may have been threatened, there is no policy, and a substantial number of people have talked, and absolutely nothing bad has happened to them. Well, the UFO people beat them up, but as far as the government, nobody's been arrested or charged or had their security clearances revoked or anything like that. Again, there's no overall policy that says you can't discuss these things.
Okay, so the people who are clamoring over and over again ad infinitum for disclosure, the government has to tell us what they know. They're just barking up the wrong tree?
Well, my argument, and in the briefing I had, they have time after time after time. Presidents have, why not the White House? Presidents have come forward, several of them. Generals, senior officers, Hans Obert from, the father of space, the Vatican, and my point is, how many times do they have to tell you this is real before you believe it?
Well, it's the depth of their knowledge that I think the Stephen Bassett's, Andre Weber's, Michael Sala's, and Stephen Greer's are after. They want the smoking gun. They want it all. The government must know.
But some of this is crazy.
The universe.
You know, Greer on his website.
John.
Yeah.
Most of it is.
Greer on his website has things that are demonstrably false. Specifically, that we have been driving UFOs, and they've been you've had these capabilities since, quote, the 1960s. And you go, if so, let's understand, UFOs are not about little widgets flying around. If they're real, it's about energy. Energy, has been driving the world, for a long time. We lost, the $10 trillion. I have my $10 trillion challenge up there. Would you really have let $10 trillion evaporate just because they don't want to hold it? People assume that the government is incompetent across the board except for UFOs, where they become omniscient and omnipotent, and it makes no sense whatsoever.
Very good point.
Checks in the question I always wonder about, every day you listen to the talking heads on cable TV, right, left, middle, whatever, and they say, look how incompetent the government is. They haven't a clue what they're doing. They always get things wrong. Oh, by the way, they're keeping UFO mystery a deep, dark secret, some people say, and they've got this grand conspiracy, and they've basically engaged in disinformation. They're doing all this stuff. They know exactly what they're doing about UFOs, but when it comes to anything else, they're just a bunch of incompetents.
It doesn't seem to go together. The twains don't go together.
It doesn't stack up, does it? Well, here's a good way to possibly kind of wrap up this wonderful 3-hour show with you. And again, thank you so much. It was great meeting you in Victoria, and I'm so happy that you agreed to be on the show. And hopefully we'll get a return visit where we can go into some of these areas in a little bit more in depth. But where do we go from here, John? I mean, where does the scientific community, the civilian research community go from here? We're dealing, we're dealing with the giggle factor and scientific and academic scorn. We need government transparency. You mentioned, and I love the term, the puzzle paradox and the need for micropattern analysis. Where do we go from here?
Well, one of the things I point out is that the UFO community, if there is as such, is their own worst enemies. I mean, they are instrumental in making it impossible for reputable scientists to enter the field. Again,